Chapter 22. I have to do this. Geppettia's heavy breathing is the only sound in the toy store as she intently follows the satellite screen. The black shadow of the Cherox is still parked in the center of the cement factory, backed up against a wall. Downing the last of her cold tikra, Geppettia shudders and rubs her face.
What to do? What to do?
She murmurs repeatedly, desperately trying to salvage the situation. Suddenly, two motorbikes come into view, racing toward the car.
There they are.
She sighs with relief. She watches as the riders stop their bikes and shortly embrace each other. Pico excitedly calls out,
"There's Everin."
Geppettia watches the group gather around the trunk of Pris's car as they all suddenly start to twitch and flinch. In horror, she watches them slump unconscious to the ground.
No!
Geppettia cries out, stepping in front of the screen to touch the unconscious figure of Everin. Tears trickle down her cheeks and fall on the satellite screen. Out of the night, two gunmen with hunting rifles approach the motionless group of bodies. With an air of routine, they begin to tie up the unconscious, then drag them to the wall near the car. Red blips appear on the air control hologram and Eddie quietly reports,
"There are two copter signals leaving the geothermal power plant, Master."
Geppettia moans in despair and lowers her head. Staring at the floor tiles, her resilience seems to trickle out of her like her still-flowing tears.
"We must do something."
Pico demands from Geppettia as they watch one gunman put his foot on Aria's arm. Eddie warns,
"The copters will arrive soon, Master."
Eddie has long shut down all solution-finding algorithms after their analysis points to the only solution in existence. Activate the master key. Geppettia remains silent as if paralyzed. She looks up again as bright lights suddenly illuminate the factory grounds. Helplessly, she watches as their friends are encircled by ATC agents. Before she even recognizes Cyphrin by her stature, Geppettia knew it would be her. Pico touches her arm and looks up at her.
"Mom, we need the master key now."
Geppettia watches as Pris is beaten down by the crow, slumping to the ground unconscious. Instinctively, Geppettia gazes to the back room, where Pris's son, Corin, sleeps.
If we...
Geppettia begins to pace up and down behind the counter, incoherently mumbling about possible options. Pico and Eddie still follow the scene at the cement factory. Two flashes of light illuminate the screen. As the copters rise into the night sky, two crow bodies remain on the dusty ground. Pico looks up at Eddie, then at Geppettia, then back at the satellite screen. The puppet sits down cross-legged on the floor and looks up at Eddie's half-dome.
"I'm sorry, Eddie,
Pico says.
but I have to do this."
It settles into a relaxed position, its head dropping to its chest. Eddie senses an unauthorized access to the mainframe, but hesitates to inform Geppettia.
"Are you sure, Pico?"
Eddie asks as he follows Pico's data requests into the quarantined memory.
"No, I'm not sure.
Pico replies,
I have to save Everin. I have to help Mom. There is no time."
Geppettia finally frees herself of her irrational thoughts and stops short.
Pico?
She stares down at the puppet that looks at her with its eternal smile.
"Don't worry, Mom.
Pico tells her softly.
It will be okay."
Eddie senses the master key leaving the quarantined section of the mainframe. The key loses its encryption and is again active in its pure form. Eddie muses for a millisecond on the powers the key holds and how Eddie, the AI, would lead a global empire. After far too many iterations, Eddie grudgingly accepts that its architecture is just not capable of handling a global empire.
Pico?
Geppettia anxiously asks again, haunted by a sudden premonition of what Pico is about to do. Pico's body suddenly stretches in a tense arch, and the servo motors whine randomly, shaking the body of the puppet. Strange digital noises stream out of Pico's mouth, a distorted scratching mixed with blurred words and staccato radio waves. As Geppettia tries to keep Pico from hurting itself, she smells the stench of hot carbon rising from Pico's
Okay,
body.
see.
The chips and memory banks in Pico start to overheat.
He's burning up.
She calls out and runs into the back room, while Pico's body is still shaking.
"Hang in there, kiddo."
Eddie cheers Pico up, unsure if the puppet still has audio input. Geppettia hurries back equipped with a large portable fan. She carefully turns Pico's body on its side.
You couldn't wait, could you?
Gepetto murmurs angrily, but strangely relieved that Pico spared her the decision. She removes the hot carbon plating on Pico's back. Underneath, hundreds of tightly packed chips and memory banks are woven into an intricate net of liquid cooling tubes. Inside, tiny servo motors erratically push and pull different sections of Pico's body. Gepetto points the fan directly at Pico's open back, setting it to highest capacity. Feeling the puppet's head, she realizes that Pico's cooling system is at its limits. The puppet flinches every now and then, but lies motionless on the floor.
Master, how is Pico?
I don't know.
Gepetto replies.
Not good in any case. He's still hot. His whole cooling system is overheated.
Amazed by the puppet's capacity to process these huge data masses, she shakes her head and whispers,
The data exchange must be insanely high. I just hope we build him right.
I will follow the copter.
Eddie notes quietly.
They seem to return to the geothermal plant.
Yes, good idea.
Gepetto replies distantly. Her world has shrunk down to this little puppet with its eternal smile, burning inside with incurable fever. Eddie shifts the satellite view to the power plant. A plateau has been blasted into a mountain slope, and buildings for administration, worker accommodation, and storage are systematically placed around the entrance gate to the plant. After a while, the two copters come into view and descend to the landing pad. Eddie spots Raylan being held by two ATC agents. With Cyphrin leading the way, Raylan is taken off the landing pad and toward the entrance gate. The others are herded at gunpoint toward an administration building. Eddie indulges in its own thoughts for a moment. It finds a critical accumulation of algorithms that infer future events by doubtful association in the past. Gepetto would call it hope. Is there anyone left to hope for? Hello?